Good afternoon, comrades. That wasn't supposed to go up. So, hi, I'm Harry Brewis, and I make YouTube videos under the channel Hbomberguy. When I was 6, my cousin came up with that name, and I'm not a very creative person, so I just kept it going. My channel is all kinds of things. I do a variety of things. Media criticism, using facts and data to pwn people on the internet. Here I am, handcuffed to my parents' garage door while complaining about the whole soy boy thing. I talk a lot about soy isoflavones and their effect on sperm quality. It's an hour long. You don't have to watch it. It's fine. Whatever. And also, for similar reasons, I destroyed a wall of my set to yell at Ben Shapiro about climate change. To whoever took that clip and put it on Twitter and 5 million people saw it, thanks, but I would have really enjoyed if I'd got to have done that. That's fine. No big deal. Another small thing I did was in January this year, I raised around $350,000 for a trans charity in the UK to spite a former comedy writer. And I've been asked to explain how that happened. So let's try and discern how together. Right. So we should probably begin with Mermaids. Mermaids is a charity that provides resources and support for children with gender dysphoria, children who are trans or non-binary, and also helps parents come to terms with that, because very often, especially in Britain, we have no idea what any of this stuff is. So having there actually be organizations whose job is to explain it to you is a really, really great thing. However, there are some people who don't like trans people, just a little bit, I don't know, just don't seem to like them, really. I'm not really sure. I'm sure they believe they have good reasons, but we're not going to entertain them here because they're not. Which brings us to Graham Linehan. He used to write for comedic TV shows and take the credit for other people's jokes, and currently he tweets a lot. He's got some things to say about trans people, and he's very sure that he knows what women want, and it's his job to fight for them to his satisfaction. He fancies himself a feminist activist, but the radical kind that believe the solution to women's problems is to exclude trans people. I wish there was a word for that, but in case you're interested, Graham's Wikipedia page has a whole section for his anti-transgender activism, and it contains this enlightening sentence. Linehan has compared transgender activism to Nazi Germany. The nuanced understanding haver has logged on. So anyway, my mouth is really dry. I was really nervous about this. I don't do public speaking. I pretend I can do it and then edit it to look good later. So. That's right, I'm a liar, thank you. Great. So in December of last year, when most other rich white men with careers in television are probably thinking about where they're going to take a vacation to, Graham had heard that Mermaids were being awarded £500,000 by the National Lottery to try and expand their operation. And he took to Mumsnet to do something about it. Now, what is Mumsnet? Mumsnet is a forum in the UK for mothers and Graham Linehan to complain about trans people. And you can see here, he told everyone who read this thread to mass email a woman who happens to work for the National Lottery to complain about what had just happened. And this resulted in the funding being put under review while the National Lottery tried to figure out why they were getting hundreds of complaints from weirdos. They had to figure out if they were being sent because they genuinely made a mistake, because they do take themselves very seriously and they really do want to consider people's criticisms. They had to figure out if that was why, or if because a famous person had told them to. We'll find out more about that later. Anyway, I decided to do something about it, but in my own personal way, where it's a horrible mess, and that way I'm not responsible for if it goes bad, because who would have expected it to? I did a video about the speedrunning community, for those of you who don't know. There are some people who take it upon themselves to play video games very quickly, but they, and then there was GDQ, if you've heard of that, amazing event. It's pretty cool. They've never invited me, but that's fine. And they raised millions of dollars for charities, for cancer research and all kinds of other wonderful things. And I decided while I was doing this video that I wanted to do a little mini GDQ. I wanted to do a terrible game done slowly. So there's an old game called Donkey Kong 64. You might have, okay. And it's... Basically, it takes ages if you want to complete it fully, and no one should ever do it. I never beat it as a kid, because even as a child, I had patience. But I decided to promise on this video to beat it, because when you're a millennial, you promise to do extravagant yet trivial things to bring a sense of narrative purpose to your life. So I decided the time had come, and I should do this for Mermaids. So I made a video announcing it, 8:30 p.m. On January the 18th, and just said this is why I was doing it. I feel like the conversation, especially in Britain, about trans issues is just woefully rubbish, just complete waste of time. And at the end of the video, I remember saying, I hope to see you all there, have a great night, don't forget to moisturize, and fuck you, Graham. And this highlights for me at the time what the stream embodied to me. Now, I recognize some people in the audience, and some of you are actually quite nice. And you probably do things for people that are nice because you want to help them, or you want to do good things. I wanted to annoy a guy on the internet. I hadn't really expected the stream to go anywhere. I'd done charity stuff in the past, and kind of generally we max out at like $3,000 for various things. So I went into this with very low expectations. This is just kind of a thing for me to vent this aggression I have against a man who used to write jokes. But the problem with having very low expectations is it means that when something else happens, you actually don't know how to handle them because you didn't expect it to go well. Because it was at 8:30 p.m., because a lot of Americans watch my stuff for some reason, I went to bed in the afternoon at like 3 o'clock. I set my alarm for 8:30, and then I woke up at 9 p.m. having slept through the alarm. So I did what any ordinary person would do. I panicked. I went in the shower. I came out naked. I hit go on the stream. The cap was on the camera. I did not check until I'd hit stream. And the first 5 minutes of me wondering if I'd just canceled myself. But then... So I set a goal at the bottom. You can set a custom goal, so as it goes up, you can set more. And I set this modest of like $500, thinking, well, that's the first 8 hours set. Anyway, in the first 30 minutes, when I was explaining why I'd had all these problems and why I was in my dressing gown, we'd raised over $1,000. And the timer hadn't started yet. We hadn't started playing the game. And this was the first moment where I realized I probably should have prepared. At this point, 56 minutes in, I'd passed any intended limit I'd had whatsoever by about $1,000, and I was beginning to wonder if people knew what the stream was. Why were people coming to this? Is there some Russian thing happening here? I don't know. That's a thing that happens now, right? Anyway, so it kept going, and then eventually I realized that I was going to get tired, and I was already sick of being fun. And this is a part of the game that destroyed me as a child. You have to play the original Donkey Kong. So I called my friend Pio, who is a non-binary trans person, and just had them in the call to hang out and keep my spirits up while I get increasingly aggravated by this ancient game. Pio is their internet username. I've been friends with Pio for many years, and I have never learned their name. Because that is how friendships work nowadays. That's just how we live our lives. I've met people who come up to me and say, "Are you Hbomb?" I'm like, "No, that's not my name, but fine, it's fine." So Yeah, so at one point, partway through the stream, I accidentally set the current total to $170,000 and realized that I'd maybe set my expectations a bit too high at that point. I'm pausing dramatically for people who know how this goes. I'm also very thirsty, I'm sorry. I drank 6 gallons of water like a day during that stream. It's terrible. I have this giant 2-liter bottle thing. It's terrible. Anyway, so Pio had to go to work or something. So eventually I started calling just whoever I had who was a friend of mine, who was around, who could keep me awake and prevent me from losing any understanding of what was happening anymore, because when you play an old game for long enough, you start to want to do anything else. Your eyes slide off it. So I got my friend Dan Olsen on, Foldable Human on the internet. This guy, wonderful guy. And my friend Crystal, Shannon Strucci, who is a co-producer of a lot of my videos. Dogstrong, who is another person whose name I don't know, who is a non-binary person, and also Casey Explosion, who is a trans activist, who's a fairly prominent member of the trans community on Twitter. That's what they tell me anyway. So at this point, things started to get a bit absurd, and I realized that I needed to go to bed, not just because I was tired, but just to think about my life. You can actually see the corner of the bed there, and there's actually a wiki called WikiFeet that keeps track of people's feet. And at some point, there's a... It's fine. You just have to... it's one of the many things you learn to accept when you do this for your life. It's fine. It's fine. I can't delete it. So, anyway, at this point, we were like, well, we're going to have we decided to call the Skeleton Crew with a K, because Donkey Kong, where clearly I can't just go to bed and leave this thing, because there's some momentum happening here. So all the friends that I've currently listed who were there, I threw them into a Discord server and went, okay, you make this last all night. And then I went to bed, and I put a skeleton in the chair. Lost control of my stream. So I could tell something was going to go wrong when I was brushing my teeth in preparation for bed, and I went to look at the camera and read the chat, and people started writing "Teeth Gang" over and over. People will still be writing "Teeth Gang" by the time I wake up, about 6.5 hours from then. The Skeleton Crew turns out to be the best idea I've ever accidentally had while panicking. Because it turns out that when you give a lot of people who actually know how to organize things access to a server where other people can call in and just be on the stream, that maybe they should figure out who could be on it. And maybe they don't just invite Harry's friends, who he reckons would be fun, and they start like asking people who maybe know things about the topic being discussed, who maybe know more than me. I don't know much of anything, frankly. So there's this very wonderful camaraderie started where people were just talking about their own lives and experiences. And when I woke up, $10,000 had been raised for Mermaids while I was asleep, and people were still writing "Teeth Gang" in the chat. And this would, in fact, continue. And one person in the audience, who I know is here, has a tattoo of a tooth now because of this. So, you're welcome. And also, I'm deeply sorry. Anyway, day 2 of the stream was very, very different, because now we continue... Oh my God. I didn't have time to go through hair and makeup, I'm sorry. But because now there was some sense of organization. People who had some kind of experience they wanted to share, or who knew things about the topic of transness, could reach out to people like Dan or Casey and actually get a response, because I wouldn't be able to respond. I was playing the game, and then come in and talk about whatever they wanted to. At one point, Susie Green, who is the CEO of Mermaids, someone called her to say, "This fucking guy, he's playing Donkey Kong." So, as I very sleepily played the game and ate red peppers loudly into the mic, in my dressing gown, Dan and Casey fielded questions to the CEO of Mermaids, and she very politely said things about Graham that are not legally troublesome, which was very clever of her. And they also got to go in search of more guests. At one point, about 27 hours in, I was on stream with my good friends Ollie Thorne, who runs the YouTube channel PhilosophyTube, Natalie Wynn, who runs the channel ContraPoints, and of course Lindsay Ellis, who runs the channel Lindsay Ellis. And that was when it started to hit me that a thing was happening, and I had a little cry on the stream. It wasn't embarrassing at all, and I believe it was Lindsay coined the hashtag #ThanksGraham, in which people sarcastically thank Graham for all the good he's accidentally done. But I think that's really a key part of this here is, despite being caused by spite, I didn't plan that, something actually positive was happening for the good of other people, and people were getting involved. And it was no longer about annoying some guy. It was about doing a good thing. We'd flipped a switch, and now it was nice. So the thanking of Graham is sort of this symbolic thing, but really he was gone. He didn't matter. He didn't even come up for the rest of the stream, really. It was like he'd been thrown into the memory hole, which is a reference to 1984. Okay, I'm going to update it. It's like if a big purple man had snapped his fingers. Anyway, because at this point I'm just losing it. You know, I don't believe. At this point, I think I've died and gone to some bizarre hell where something nice happens and then they stab you. So I said, if we raise $100,000, I will write the word Sobek, which is the name of an ancient Egyptian god that I think is fun, on my forehead, and go to the store to buy more food supplies for the rest of the stream. Thinking, aha, they'll stop donating to avoid me the embarrassment. I want to thank my friends who work at the co-op in Kelsall for taking that picture and for knowing what was happening when I came in with the writing on my head. I didn't have to explain it. They were like, oh, we know. So thank you very much. So this is the last time my face should come up in this, but unfortunately Facecam is on the whole time. It was an accident, because at this point the stream isn't really, it ceased to be about me. I'm just a background character who happens to be playing the video game. Specifically, this game, Beaver Bother. Beaver Bother is a mini-game made for Donkey Kong, which was not finished. It's very difficult to beat. I went on the speedrunning forum. They don't know how exactly you do it. You kind of run in a circle and pray. And they put this minigame in the game 3 times. You have to do it 3 times. Don't know why. 3 3/4 hours are spent on iterations of this game. Anyway, while I'm playing this game and my mind is melting and I have stuff written on my head, Casey announces that Chelsea Manning knows about the stream. And Chelsea Manning logs the heck on to my stream. And a personal hero of mine hangs out, and I sleepily say, oh my God, this is amazing, wow. And then briefly leave to try and figure out how to beat Beaver Bother, and eventually we finish it. But then then Chelsea hangs out on the stream for quite a long time, just chilling out, ordering pizza, talking about stuff. It's kind of amazing. We get Nat Puff, who I believe is in the audience today, a trans musician, left at London, came on to talk about her work. And this was the true turning point when now this isn't about any of the shit that I do. This isn't silly anymore. This is a thing. By hour 36, I'm not even present, really. I've desynchronized. Casey and Dan have become full-time organizers. They were awake for longer than me and put in more effort than me. And by this point, a very large and diverse group of trans people from all kinds of different walks of life, different countries, different experiences, are coming on just to talk about their lives. And I joked before that it was no longer just a bunch of my friends coming on, but I feel like I made a lot of friends as a result of this. And I'm very thankful for the work that Casey and Dan have done. How do I make this mic work? Okay, so by hour 39, I'm in bed again. And what follows is the second skeleton crew, where we get 7 hours of trans people just talking about their lives and experiences and what it's like. And watching back through, I learned a lot of incredibly new things that I'd never even heard of before to do with the trans experience. The concept of gender euphoria, where you suddenly start to feel good about who you are, which is a thing that doesn't get talked about often enough because it's very hard to get there. But because we actually opened up a platform for people to come on and talk, we found people who had got there. We got to hear from sides of the experience that don't get talked about because it never gets talked about at all. So how are these people going to be heard? And it was amazing getting to learn a new thing that I felt like I had some understanding of. But it's wonderful being made to feel like a complete idiot, especially in regards to something like this. You know, I'm glad I was wrong about whether or not people would watch the stream, so it's one of those things. A trans woman named Melody came on to talk about how mermaids saved her life, the difference that a call made when she was in a dark place and needed help. And later we managed to get her back on while Susie was on, the CEO of Mermaids, to talk to her directly. And that, for me, is one of the highlights of the whole stream. At this point, people who do video game stuff are hearing about this. Grant Kirkhope, John Romero, and Josh Sawyer, the developer of Fallout New Vegas, have come on to say trans rights and to throw their support behind this. People from, cool people are retweeting the stream. At one point, Neil Gaiman did, which is cool. One of the goals that we put at the bottom of the goal bar was American Gods is a pretty good book. Thanks. So with all these people coming on, people started joking that we should try to get Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on. It was a funny joke, and I laughed. But, and I cleverly mentioned this before, Chelsea was hanging around in the call and happens to be friends with her. So this is the face I made when she joined the call. Now, 50 hours into this nightmare of logistics, sleep deprivation, and of course Donkey Kong, Dan, Casey, and Chelsea interviewed future President of the United States, and my close personal friend, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, as I ran around in circles trying to find a switch that I missed 45 hours ago. We raised $10,000 over the duration of this quite short conversation. And I have to remember that Dan and Casey were there because there's a video that Now This made about this moment, and they're credited as unidentified caller. So shout out to unidentified caller. I like to think that we're all unidentified caller, really, in some small way. But my actual favorite moment in the stream happened 50 hours and 30 minutes in. One of our guests on was with their partner, who is trans and disabled. And they mentioned that they had a GoFundMe for their wheelchair. They wanted to get a new wheelchair because they're having problems with their current equipment. And the goal was £750. And 4 minutes later, they hit refresh on that GoFundMe to find that it was now £1,000 over their initial goal. And as this couple burst into shocked cry laughter, I pulled that face. And I realized, oh yeah, this stuff affects people and it's happening now, and we can just tell people about things. In hour 57, after having literally dozens of trans people on to share their lives and humanity, and on this increasingly public platform, which is not an easy thing to do, I finally completed the game, and Dan let everyone in the server into the call at once to say hi. It's utter chaos. But there's a beautiful moment, if you watch it back, where the call bugs out, and for a split second, a trans woman, who I'm not sure, an unidentified caller, says, "I just want everyone to know that I'm very gay." So as the stream winds down and I can finally stop the timer, as you can see, it's actually ended, we say our goodbyes, and I listened to Left at London's song Revolution Lover, which is incredible, and I can now not listen to without crying. And just melted down in my chair and waited for the sea to take me, but it didn't. So I went to bed and I left the stream going just so people could continue to wind the stream down if they wanted to get any donations in. And if a lot of people donate to a thing, it gets staggered, so it takes a few hours to catch up, just because of the frequency that people were donating. The final total is just over $350,000, and that's not counting the donations made directly to Mermaids during the stream. We're speaking... Susie offered to send me pizza during the stream, and I was like, I actually live in the woods. You can't deliver here. Nothing delivers here. That was a true story. I've since moved to Wales, so now no one can even find me. I live next to a carpet factory. Anyway, but instead she offered to take me out for pizza, so me and my friend Sean, who did a lot of work on the stream behind the scenes as well, went and had pizza with them. And she mentioned that because of this, the frequency of donations directly to them went up, and that's really great, because I was worried that it would just be a thing that I did, and people wouldn't actually think about the people it was affecting, but they did. So once again, people proved me wrong by being human, just incredible. So it's good. It's pretty nice. So the £500,000 that they were supposed to get was for a project that would have lasted 5 years. So that money is just over half of that. So we'd funded 2.5 years of an operation that I'd intended to put a minor dent in. And interesting enough, when you work on a big project like that and you get funding, funds are ring-fenced. You can't spend them on anything else. So if you want to expand anywhere else, that's not what that money's for. You can't do that, legally speaking. But the money we raised, they can do whatever they want with, which is pretty cool. It's a minor legal thing. Doesn't matter. It's fine. I'm old enough to pay taxes now, so this matters to me. But speaking of that money, after reviewing the many just horribly written emails, now, I would absolutely love to say you're welcome, but no. The emails they were getting were ridiculous. They were always going to get that money back, really. But also, that's pretty cool. So that was just a play-by-play of a thing that I was partially present for, but I was mostly either asleep or just zoned out. But anyway, what did I learn? Because, what I learned is, I need to center my white cis male message here. Because sitting and watching this silly thing explode around me for reasons beyond my control, I realized some things that I figured I'd like to share since I've got the chance. I'm not sure how over time I've gone, but they can't stop me. The first thing is that change is granular. We like to think of history as a series of curtains that open and we arrive at a better age every single time. Someone decides not to go to the back of a bus, and then racism is over. Or Hamilton comes out, and racism is over. But it turns out that these things are specific, and they take a very long time. And my friend May, who runs the YouTube channel Nick Spheres, the wonderful trans woman who makes amazing videos that I can't stop plugging, mentioned that none of the financial aspect of this is a minor part. What matters is the support, is the sense of solidarity and friendship. And you can make a very big difference in someone's lives. Yes, with money, obviously. The moment with the wheelchair was amazing. But also just by being friends with people, by letting people know that you care and that they're valuable to you. Because often we don't like to say that. It's easier to argue with people that you ultimately agree with than it is to tell them that you like them sometimes. So on that note, I love you. But, change is granular, so there, that's that slide done. The next thing is community is magical. I emulated GDQ and then brought on people who emulated it better than me. And actually, by letting the trans community, as it were, know that a thing was happening for them, it became a thing, it became a momentary consensus that everyone could feel involved in. And ultimately, that's how things really get done. I'm just a guy who played Donkey Kong, but a lot of people wanted the thing I was doing it for to happen, and that's really what mattered. I really didn't do anything. I was in bed a large portion of the time. The other lesson I learned is a much more personal one. It's that your friends will save you. If you surround yourself with people who you can really trust, sometimes they will. They can turn a thing that you were doing out of spite into an actual positive thing for people. I feel like I was saved partially from myself over the course of all of this. I think secretly we're always making one of two decisions, and we make that decision even if we don't know we're making it. You're either choosing to make life worse for someone you don't like or better for people you care about. And there is an actual difference, and I didn't realize that I'd made the wrong choice until a lot of people came over and helped change the choice retrospectively. This next thing is a lesson, learn from my mistakes. You can plan things in advance. And also, to really make a difference in the world, very often we have to organize. We've just seen a very wonderful talk from the Games Workers Union about how sometimes you actually need to do things. Like, ultimately, basically 90% of my life is I tweet. That's not activism. That's not really a thing. I don't feel like I'm really contributing in that way. And I think we have to work together to find ways that we really can make a difference, or we ultimately won't, even if we feel like we might be able to. And I think it's very easy to want change and much harder to go, well, how do we actually do this? And I didn't achieve any of that with this, but I realized that was the thing I could have learned to do, so I figured I might, someone else do a better thing than me. That's the general point of this. And the last thing is that more people care than you think. I expected everyone to go, oh, that's nice, and then go on with their lives. But it turned out that an awful lot of people all over the world, and I know because the currencies, when you get an email from PayPal when they get a currency that you've not got before, and you have to manually accept the money. I spent 48 hours after the stream accepting rubles and New Zealand dollars, just money from all over the world, because it turns out that an awful lot of people do care about this issue. And I think very often, because of the complete atomization of our society under a big word that means workers not owning anything, it's easy to believe that you're on your own here, but it turns out that we're actually not alone. XOXO is a wonderful place, there's some great people here, but it turns out that there's a maximum size at this venue. And there are more of us than we can actually imagine. The list of people who don't understand these issues or don't care or who think these people don't exist is unfortunately quite long right now. But the list of people who believe and actually want to make things better is an awful lot longer. And that's the main thing that I learned. So thank you all very much for redeeming my faith in humanity.